Layer 2 scaling solutions like Liquid, like Lightning, and Arc, they're all things that allow us to use Bitcoin in daily transactions and in daily life. Um, as you mentioned, on Bitcoin Layer 1, you do have to wait 10 minutes, maybe more sometimes, and it's probably safer to wait for more confirmation. So Layer 1s are really a settlement network. And it's going to be the higher layer abstractions of Layer 1 that will allow global usage for 8 billion people.
Welcome back to Lights on Invest, your go-to channel for everything crypto, the stock market, and investment. Today we're diving into a must-watch discussion with Samson Mow, the visionary CEO of Jan3, a Bitcoin technology company on a mission to bring financial freedom to the entire world. Mow is at the forefront of Bitcoin Layer 2 innovations, pioneering platforms that are essential to scaling Bitcoin as a true global currency. But here's the big question. Can Bitcoin really serve all 8 billion people on Earth? According to Mow, the answer is a resounding yes, and the technology being built right now is making hyperbitcoinization a reality faster than you think. But that's just the beginning. The bigger picture? We're witnessing an explosive wave of nation-state adoption, political shifts, and corporate investments in Bitcoin. With Trump's executive order on crypto, governments are finally taking Bitcoin seriously. Meanwhile, corporate giants are making strategic moves that could send Bitcoin's price soaring in the coming months. This is a pivotal moment in history, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Before we roll the next clip from the interview, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for the latest Bitcoin news, price predictions, and expert insights. Your support helps us grow. Thank you, and let's dive in.
This is why for Aqua Wallet, we're building on both Lightning and Liquid. Lightning in and of itself is still not quite there yet, and it's questionable if it will be widely adopted by end users in a non-custodial manner. It's probably more likely that Lightning will evolve to be an interoperability layer between different things like Liquid, like eCash mints, and other types of L2 sort of holding abstractions. So you can look at it, look at Liquid and eCash as ways to hold value and transact over Lightning down the road. But yeah, you kind of hit the point on the head, which is we do need layer 2 tech to scale Bitcoin, and I don't think it's a problem. Right now, I would say the thing that I don't really like is a lot of layer 2 projects are popping up, and they're more like altcoins than layer 2s. I mean, even Tron has said they are a layer 2 now. So at which point do you draw the line? But for me, if you launched a quote unquote layer 2 and you have some alternative token that you need to buy for governance or for whatever, then it's not really a Bitcoin layer 2. There should be no payment in a Bitcoin layer 2 outside of Bitcoin itself, and there should be no token issuance pertaining directly to transacting on that layer 2.
What do you bring it to us? What do you kick off this hyperbitcoinization, in your opinion?
It's all interconnected. So hyperbitcoinization will be some factor of failure of fiat money. So it would be probably the dollar failing at that point. And we're seeing many fiat currencies show signs of failure or dysfunction. I mean, the Japanese yen is one. Yesterday, we saw the euro drop massively. But these fiat currencies are really just units of account at this point. They're really not mediums of exchange because they're locking down the system by which we exchange them and using it for surveillance. And they're not stores of value anymore. So all of these fiat currencies are just hanging on by the skin of their teeth. They're about to fail. And when that hits a tipping point, we'll see hyperbitcoinization. So hyperbitcoinization is the point at which we don't need to convert Bitcoin into fiat currencies. And that's why the fiat failure or massive system overload is going to be the catalyst for hyperbitcoinization. But also, we need a lot of tech to support hyperbitcoinization, because if you're not moving out of Bitcoin into something else, then you need to use Bitcoin for payments. And this is why we need to develop these layer 2 solutions. We need friendlier, more accessible wallets for the average person. And there's a lot of education needed too. So this is why we're doing what we're doing at Jan3. So we're engaging with governments to position themselves ahead of hyperbitcoinization, where they have a reserve treasury in Bitcoin, But at the same time, they're working to educate their population, their citizens, on how to use Bitcoin. Because when we hit that tipping point and we start going parabolic and everyone wants Bitcoin because nobody wants the German mark, that means there are going to be a lot of scams and a lot of people potentially moving into other things like altcoins to scramble out of their fiat currencies. And that would not be optimal. So it's better to prepare ahead of time and get people educated about Bitcoin and ready to use Bitcoin before we hit that inflection mark. When you hit hyper-Bitcoinization, there will be no price of Bitcoin. It'll just be denominated in Bitcoin or in bits or in sats. So you won't have a dollar price. Probably just before hyper-Bitcoinization, you'll start to see Bitcoin at $10-50 million a coin or something like that. But when you cross over hyper-Bitcoinization, that's when no one measures it in the fiat terms anymore. It doesn't make sense to. So yeah, to answer your question, you'll probably see it in the 50 to 100 million range per coin just before we flip over to hyper-Bitcoinized state. Potentially. So back when El Salvador was preparing their Bitcoin law, they were looking at other companies to develop the Chivo wallet. And, Jan3 wasn't formed at that point, but Blockstream was in the running to potentially do something, but the timelines just didn't work out. But now with Aqua, if let's say Argentina wants to adopt a Bitcoin standard and they want a government wallet, we could reskin Aqua, and the improvement over Chivo is that it would be non-custodial. So all users would have their own funds, but we can create the swap mechanism from Bitcoin to Argentinian pesos for the government so that they can make it cheaper for people to swap in and out of pesos to Bitcoin if they wanted to. This just as an example. But having Aqua, it can serve that B2G opportunity if it were to arise. And there are some governments that do want to have their own wallets just to make it cheaper for people to swap. I think that was the main motivation for El Salvador to launch Chivo. They wanted it basically free for the people to swap from Bitcoin to dollars and to make it accessible to everyone in the country. But it's still important. And I think especially at this point, it makes sense for the countries to adopt Bitcoin because, if you look at the adoption curve, more and more institutional investors, pension funds, they're all scooping up Bitcoin. And it doesn't make sense for governments to miss this, especially governments in LATAM that do have to deal with debts. So I think Argentina would be the perfect place for Bitcoin treasury strategies because Milei wants to get out of the situation with the debt. So Bitcoin would be the way to accelerate that timeline. He said something like 20-30 years to fix the situation in Argentina. But I think with Bitcoin adoption there, you could shorten that timeline to 5 to 10 years if you play your cards right. So we're hoping to get that meeting with Milei sometime and pitch him the idea of Bitcoin bonds. Well, he understands money, unlike a lot of people. So already we're halfway there. I think he wants to be impartial and deregulate money. So you can use Bitcoin for payments and to settle contracts in Argentina right now. But I think he'll have to make a decision eventually whether he's going to embrace Bitcoin or try to stay neutral. But it's really difficult to stay neutral with Bitcoin, right? You can say we don't want to be partial to Bitcoin, but you can't have a Bitcoin treasury in your national reserves without saying that. So sometime in the next couple of years, Milei is going to have to decide, is it Bitcoin or is it debt? But I think the change in discourse by which politicians are putting Bitcoin front and center is an important one because that changes the entire dynamic around Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not about people buying drugs or being used by criminals anymore, which was the prevailing narrative for a very long time. But now Bitcoin is, institutional grade investment from BlackRock and from Fidelity and from Bitwise and all these other guys. And countries are buying it for their national treasuries. And it's a topic that politicians are now discussing actively. So I think this change is paving the way towards hyper-Bitcoinization, regardless if they follow through or not. I think it is the game theory playing out. You cannot decide that you don't want the hardest asset on the planet, right? That's just like saying, 100 years ago, you don't want gold. That's really not for you to decide as a government. You have to just understand what is money, what is an asset, and what do people want, and just follow on that. So the government mandated money era is coming to a close. That's the fiat money, right? We know that it fails on any reasonable time frame. All fiat monies fail. They all trend to zero. They all need to be rebooted, and we've seen this time and time again. There is no such thing as a government money that will survive. And now with Bitcoin, it's definitely a question of, can they convince people that they can do it again, right? Maybe the 50th time they'll succeed in making a fiat money that doesn't debase itself, but I doubt it. And with the optionality, people can choose to go into Bitcoin. They don't need to hope the government can fix the problem. They can fix the problem themselves by embracing Bitcoin. So that the timeline of fiat money is over, really. I'm just waiting for Bitcoin to reach that critical adoption curve, and it's really just the realization of the people, and that is what triggers hyperbitcoinization.
Do you think that is the biggest fear of the countries to adopt Bitcoin? In your view, what's the biggest fear of them all in terms of adopting Bitcoin? Right.
That's an interesting question. I would say there is nothing to fear about Bitcoin adoption. It's just like gold. Would you fear gold 100 years ago? You shouldn't. You should want it, not fear it. And the control that is exerted by governments and central banks over money is artificial. It's all done through mandates, and it does not work. So the question is, do you want to try again to exert control over the money supply? Because you should know that it would fail over the next 20, 30 years. And that failure timeline is going to increase as Bitcoin adoption increases too. So it's not like you're guaranteed to have another 100-year run when you make your new money, right? So I think the ultimate question really comes down to, are the politicians and governments interested in long-term prosperity for their country and for their citizens? That is the starting point by which these thought processes and discussions should begin. And I think one thing that sets President Bukele apart from others is he wants El Salvador to be prosperous in the future. And that is the guiding principle for the actions he's taking. Same with Milei. He wants to fix the situation in Argentina. And that is the guiding principle by which he's taking all these actions. Other politicians in other countries, for example, in Canada, like Trudeau, he's not trying to make things better for people in Canada. He's trying to go to climate change summits and world stages and take photos. That's his goal. If his goal was to fix the country, he would definitely be looking at what Bitcoin could do. And even at a simpler level, what is money and why is it so bad right now? Why is inflation skyrocketing? Why can people not afford their rent and groceries anymore, right? So it really comes down to where they're starting out from. And if they're able to put together a good team of advisors and people in business, industry, they should be able to figure out the path forward is some sort of Bitcoin strategy, whether it's mining Bitcoin, accumulating Bitcoin in their treasury, or Bitcoin as legal tender.
As we wrap up, one thing is clear. Bitcoin's future is bigger than most people realize. From Layer 2 innovations making Bitcoin more accessible to the political and corporate forces driving adoption, we're witnessing the foundations of hyperbitcoinization being laid before our eyes. With nation-states embracing Bitcoin, Trump's executive order on crypto, and institutional giants entering the game, the next few months could be game-changing for Bitcoin's price. But what do you think? Will these developments push Bitcoin to new highs? Is global adoption inevitable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found value in this video, hit that like button, share it with others, and of course, subscribe for more in-depth Bitcoin and crypto updates. Your support keeps us going. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.